Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Yoga Lean group meeting. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing Dr. Barry Sears as our guest speaker tonight. He is an anti-inflammatory guru and the author of The Zone Diet. About 4 or 5 weeks ago, he was a guest of Beth Shaw's on her Make America Healthy radio show. I highly encourage you to go and find that episode and listen to it. It is very educational and enjoyable. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Sears to share his wisdom talk with us.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And I thank all of you for coming tonight. Beth and I go back, almost probably 25 years, because I've been a very big fan of Beth and her approach to yoga, especially of the whole aspect of YogaFit. And we've maintained contact over the years, and both are technologies, and yoga is a technology, as is diet, basically continue to evolve. And because the number one goal we're all looking for is how to live a longer and healthier life. And the question is of how? Where's the roadmap? And what's our goal? Our goal is really to basically expand not our longevity, but our health span. Health span's defined as years of longevity minus years of disability. The average American today lives about 20% of their lifespan in chronic disability. That means the quality of your life is just miserable, and saying, this is not the way I planned it. What went wrong? And so the real goal of medicine, not so much exercise or even nutrition, but medicine, is how to expand our health span. And in the final analysis, it comes back to our metabolism. Metabolism is probably the most complex part of human existence, incredibly complex. And as a consequence, most people say, well, it's so complex, it's just, I can't explain it. So you have a lot of misinformation, a lot of dietary advice, which really doesn't stand the hallmarks of science. But if our goal is to live longer, there's one thing that's proven in every animal species, including humans, that you'll live longer and live better. Reduce the number of calories you consume. I said, well, that seems pretty simplistic. It turns out it's very complex, because our metabolism is like makes a supercomputer look like a child's tinker toy. So interacting system that basically can be activated or deactivated by our diet. And so what you're looking to do is say, how can I basically have the maximum amount of nutrition with the least amount of calories? And by doing that, you dive deep into your metabolism to control some very, very exquisite control systems that allow us to exercise better, to live longer, to squeeze all we can out of life. Now, my background is not nutrition. My background is really cancer drug delivery. And in the early 1980s, when I was much younger, I was kind of one of the leading gurus, for lack of a better word, in the area of cancer drug delivery systems. And the lipid technology I developed gave rise to the first and only nanotechnology cancer drug ever approved. It sold probably $5 billion worth of cancer drugs, and still is the primary treatment for recurrent ovarian cancer. The same lipids I developed for making that drug delivery system were the ones used to make mRNA vaccines. So that's my background. It has nothing to do with nutrition, but in 1982, the Nobel Prize in Medicine was awarded for understanding how a group of fats could cause inflammation, because they were the building blocks of hormones, incredibly powerful hormones that turn on the inflammatory response. And at that point, I had my aha moment. I said, if that's the case, then if one knows how to control those hormones, not by a drug, but by using the diet as if it were a drug, you really have the understandings of how to treat not one disease, but every disease associated with inflammation. And that is every disease. Well, as usual, things are always more complicated than you think. Because again, I developed the early parts of the technology, the Zone Diet, was to reduce the amount of inflammation. And my book, which I wrote in 1995, The Zone, talked about the science of using food like a drug to control inflammation. But as I mentioned, things are usually more complex because it's not so much turning off inflammation. You want to turn on the second part of the inflammatory response, which is called resolution. That's a far more complex. That's how the body heals itself. It's one thing to reduce inflammation. The real key is how to heal the damage caused by the inflammation. And that led into a deeper dive into metabolism, how to use omega-3 fatty acids and to use polyphenols. Those are the chemicals that give fruits and vegetables their color. And for thousands of years, that's all we thought they did. But it turns out they're very profound agents that can basically turn on that resolution response in high enough concentrations in your body. So the concept of the zone has continued to evolve into a more, let's say, a wider area, which I call metabolic engineering. You've probably heard of genetic engineering. So, oh yeah, that's really complex. It turns out it's like child's play compared to metabolic engineering. It's been a great tool, research tool, to understand the mysteries of metabolism. But for medicine, it really hasn't delivered much, except a few anoclonal antibodies that make a lot of money, but they really don't go to the nub of understanding what causes chronic disease. Metabolic engineering is now using our food in a very defined format to control metabolism, to keep it in a zone. A zone that basically is not too high, but not too low, because metabolism has to be resilient. It has to be like in Florida, where I live, it's like blades of grass do very well in a hurricane. They're resilient. They'll flop back and forth. Oaks don't do very well. They're not very resilient. And so when we talk about the zone, we're talking about the resilience, being able to turn on and turn off these integral linked processes in such a way that your body is able to basically respond to injuries, both induced by physical activity or microbial infections or the diet, to curtail the inflammation caused by that, and then start the healing process. And if you can orchestrate all this, then you have the keys to the kingdom, the keys to live that longer and better life we all want to. Now, is exercise an integral part of this? Yes, it is. But I give it what I call the 80-15-5 rule. 80% of your ability to basically have a longer health span will come from your diet. 15% from exercise, and 5% from stress reduction. Now, they're all important, but not equally important. And so what you're looking to do is develop a lifestyle that reduces stress. Yoga does an excellent job of that. A lifestyle that incorporates physical activity. Yoga does an excellent job of that. But they have to be based upon a lifestyle that basically controls inflammation and resolution. Now, most people, that kind of falls by the wayside. Say, well, I'm taking my stress reduction, I'm doing my yoga, I can now enjoy whatever I want to eat. It doesn't work that way. What does work are the things that have basically passed the test of time of human wisdom and science. So let me give you a very brief aspect of how to follow a healing diet, a diet designed to heal the body. You have 37 trillion cells in your body, and you want each one to heal from damage as quickly as possible. There's only 3 things involved. First thing, you need adequate protein at each meal for 2 reasons. One, you have to maintain your lean body mass, and as we age, we actually need more protein than we did at an earlier age. The second is to shut down hunger. If you're always hungry, it's going to be very hard to restrict calories. So how much protein do you need? The amount you can fit on the palm of your hand. That's about 30 grams of protein at every meal. Why? Because that 30 grams of protein will activate powerful hormonal reactions in the gut that send hormones directly to the brain to say, stop eating. And if you're not hungry, cutting back on calories is easy. The secret is getting about 30 grams, not more, but not less at each meal. Now, that could be 4 ounces of chicken breast. It could be 2 cups of black beans. It could be 6 cups of asparagus. You're probably thinking that 6 cups of asparagus is a little tough, but you can get your 30 grams of protein. So next comes, I have to balance that protein off with carbohydrate. And again, when we deal with metabolism hates the extremes. You say, carbohydrates are the key, take them out of the diet, ketogenic diets. They rise and fall every 20 years. You need some carbohydrates to balance off the protein. Now, how much? It depends what type of carbohydrates you're eating. If you're eating non-starchy vegetables, you have to eat a lot. That could be basically maybe 3 cups of cooked vegetables at every meal. They say, no way, that's impossible. Say, yes, it's possible, you can do it. Yes, it takes a little work, but that's one of the best ways to live longer. What if I eat too many carbohydrates, or I eat the carbohydrates which get in the bloodstream as glucose faster? That's going to do everything to cause disturbances in your metabolism to basically speed up aging, because you're slowing down the healing process. So it's a balance of protein to carbohydrate, like driving a car. You can't drive your car all on gas. You can't drive it all on air. You need some combination for the most appropriate mileage. In this case, the most appropriate hormonal mileage. And what about fat? Well, now you add a dash. And what's a dash? A small amount. But a small amount of monounsaturated fat. It could be olive oil, almonds, or guacamole. Not much, but enough to basically give food both its flavor, but also basically to supply enough calories, but not too much, to make sure that your metabolism is not being out of whack. So there are really the 3 aspects of following not an anti-inflammatory diet, but really a healing diet. Yes, you're reducing the inflammation, but you're also speeding up what is called resolution, which causes the body to heal at a faster rate. Have some protein at every meal. How much? The amount you put on the palm of your hand. Balance of non-starchy carbohydrates. They're called vegetables. That's why your grandmother said, you can't leave the table until you eat all your vegetables. And the last thing, add a little fat. Now, can you do more? Yes, you can. One of the key factors is adding more omega-3 fatty acids to your diet. They too basically activate the internal aspects of metabolism to increase the healing aspect. Your grandmother knew this before, or great-grandmother knew it when she gave your grandparents a tablespoon of cod liver oil before they could leave the house. No child could leave the house without a tablespoon of cod liver oil. That was about 2.5 grams of omega-3 fatty acids. Today, the average American gets about 100 milligrams, a 95% decrease. And with that decrease of the omega-3 fatty acids, inflammation has increased correspondingly. So those are things you have to do. You have to eat right, you have to exercise, and you have to reduce stress. They all work together. The molecular biology is incredibly complicated, but doing it is pretty easy. You're already 2/3 of the way there by basically using yoga and meditation. But the last mile is the hardest. It's your diet. If you combine all 3 together, you've got basically the triad for a longer and better life. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Wow, that was a little eye-opening. So, group, do you have any questions for Dr. Sears? I wish I would have written mine down when I was taking notes. Questions from the group, and I'll hopefully remember the one that I had earlier.
I have come to the conclusion that my biggest obstacle is the fact that you cannot out-train a bad diet.
That's correct.
So like I said earlier, your book arrived today, and I can't wait to dive in and work it all out. So thank you for that.
Well, and again, my first experiments in terms of trying my theories out some 30 years ago were with world-class athletes, because world-class athletes live in a world of inflammation by choice, by the intensity of their training and the intensity of their competition. And the first group I had a chance to work with on a large scale was the Stanford swim team back in 1992. And that was an Olympic year. And in 1992, the Stanford swimmers won 7 gold medals in Barcelona. Very good for one country, extraordinary for one university. And the reason is because the Stanford swimmers bought into the concept that this program could not only reduce the inflammation of their intensity of their training, but speed up the healing process. And as an Olympic athlete, you trained for decades for a very brief moment in time. It might be 20 seconds, no more than 2 minutes. But in that short time period, those decades of training either basically fall by the wayside or result in victory. And so at the Olympic level, all the athletes are physically gifted. They're all driven. They're all ambitious. They all have great coaches. So what distinguishes those who finish 8th in swimming versus 1st? Very small differences. And those small differences were the diet. And so once we had done that and proved that basically the technology was not going to kill anybody, we said, okay, now let's basically look at a larger population, the general American population. Because we like to believe that if we just train hard enough, we'll basically live longer. Well, anybody who's trained hard say, I tend to break down more than I live longer. Because again, you have to have diet and training working side by side. And so that the basis of the first human experimentation was done in world-class athletes. And that's explained in the book. The fact that anybody ever bought the book was always surprising to me.
I'll jump in here. I like what you said, and I want to agree with you because I think at some point I did try your diet specifically, but the times that I've been the longest on these are maybe about 3 years doing this. And then I run into going to a wedding and then diving into some sugar, and it's like a drug for me. And then I'm off and running on that, or there's some sort of stressor where I can't meal prep. I can't get adequate things, or there's always something that becomes an obstacle, and I'm never able to sustain this like long term. And I'm finding through Yoga Lean that it has to be body, mind, and soul with this. I've actually lost the most weight with no exercise, doing this exact thing that you're talking about. One through a metagenic elimination diet, which I did with a physician. And the other, believe it or not, through a part of Weight Watchers, which also, when you do their, it's what's called their core program, they just give you a list of these things and, these foods, and you just eat as much of them as you want till you're full. And on all of those, I lost 20 to 25 pounds over not a short period, but over a number of months, and sustained it for, like I said, 2 to 3 years until I hit this wall, and I don't understand why I just cannot maintain this for a lifetime. There's just so many things that come in and knock me off the pedestal.
Oh, I agree. And first of all, congratulations, because it is hard work. Make no mistake about it. It's very hard work. However, the word diet, we think of diet as a short-term period of hunger and deprivation. But the root word of the diet comes from the ancient Greek, which means a way of life. It's a way of life to control your metabolism. To control your metabolism that allows us to take food and turn it into new living tissue. When you think about it, that's pretty amazing. Mm-hmm. It's a pretty complex task. But that's what a diet is. So what one of the challenges we have is trying to find new ways to make it easier to comply. There's many temptations in life, especially when it comes to diet, that can get you off track. And then you say, I feel like I've gone into the depths of the inferno. Say, Dante told me, don't go there. And I went there anyway. So again, we're always trying to find different ways to make it easier because time is your greatest enemy.
Mhm.
That's why you have to have a system that's saying, this is what I have to do if I want to live longer and live better. Now, if those are not important, then eat whatever you want to. And pray somebody in the basement of Merck Sharp and Dome is working on a drug right now to save you from yourself. But the fact is, no such drug exists.
Mhm.
So we have to find different ways of saying the science is clear, but it's always that last mile, how to make it easy for the individual to comply.
Mhm.
And once you work on, and I've now written, I'm working on my 20th book right now. It's all about basically understanding more of the science, but the ease of using the science. If it's not easy to use, it's not going to happen.
Mhm.
But again, but you're on the right pathway. You're looking, you're searching, and that's why that my job is saying, here's the science. There's a difference between science and people writing blogs. And people say, well, that sounds good. I'll try that. Say, is there any science to support it? But the fact is, one of the biggest problems facing our country today is really basically healthcare cost. They're totally out of control.
Mhm.
And at $4 trillion a year, we simply cannot sustain that type of expenditures. We have much more important things to apply those funds to. But the fact is, as the great philosopher Pogo has told us, we've met the enemy, and the enemy is us.
Mhm.
So once the thing is, say, you have to explain what the problem is and say, give me a solution that I can follow with pretty good regularity for the rest of my life. And that's why once you understand the zone principles, you can even go to McDonald's and actually make a relatively good zone meal. Not that I would recommend it every day, but you can basically, by cutting and pasting, taking a couple of the, taking a lot of the carbohydrates off there, say, okay, it's okay in a pinch. But I know anywhere I can go, I can basically put together something that basically for the next 5 hours will basically stabilize my hunger and stabilize my levels of inflammation until I can make a better choice at the next meal. But I have to know what the rules are, and they haven't changed in 40 million years, and they won't change tomorrow.
Mhm. I think the thing that I find is that when I do get knocked off, which is where I'm at right now, I'm in a down phase. I do put the bloating and the weight on, but as I've become menopausal, I find it very, very difficult to stimulate my metabolism again and to get myself going. And I get bored. I get bored with eating a certain way, and I want to like stretch out a little bit. And I hear what you're saying. You can go off, but when I do go off, I'm off. It doesn't take me long from there.
And again, that when people say I've got a slow metabolism, no, they're really not quite right. What they have, their metabolism is inhibited. We have 37 trillion cells in our body. And in each of those 37 trillion cells, there's a master switch of metabolism. It's called AMPK. And this master switch metabolism that controls our ability to heal, controls our immune system, controls our ability to basically regenerate new tissue, is under robust dietary control. Now, the secret is saying, not telling people what they should eat. It actually is saying, what do you like to eat? And most Americans will say the 3 Ps: pizza, pasta, and pastries. Now, that's not going to change. So you can curse the darkness and say, you can't eat that. Or if you're a clever scientist, say, okay, how can we take pizza, pasta, and pastries and basically reorganize the components so rather than causing hunger, they stop hunger. They become hunger-suppressing drugs. And that's one of the technologies we developed and did clinical studies on for diabetics. If you have problems, diabetics problems are much worse. And so you had to say, go to people like, what do you like to eat as opposed to what do you should eat? Now, with the pizzas we had, the pizza crust is the drug. Just put as many vegetables on there, and you need a little cheese to keep the vegetables on top of the pizza. But our clinical studies say there's no hunger. Plus, the levels of insulin resistance, a marker of basically how well your metabolism is working drops like a rock. And after eating a small pizza, you're not hungry for the next 4, 5, 6 hours. And so basically now you're saying, how can you basically take this knowledge of how metabolism works and combine it with a food technology? And how we did this was understanding how gastric bypass surgery works. A patient who has gastric bypass surgery, as soon as they wake up and have their first meal, they'll say, I'm free. I'm free at last. Well, free of what? Hunger. I'm simply not hungry. They haven't lost any weight, but they're not hungry. And so I dive deeper into this and say, what happened when you do gastric bypass surgery? You take out the middle section of the small intestine. That's where most protein is absorbed. So I went back to my drug delivery background and said, okay, what I have to do is to change where protein is absorbed in the GI tract. So it can be absorbed lower in the GI tract, where it can interact with what are called L cells to release the hormone that goes directly to the brain saying, stop eating. So by applying drug delivery technology originally developed for cancer drug delivery, you can now basically make a wide variety of food products, pizza, pasta, desserts like croissants, pies, cakes. All of a sudden, these are now become powerful drugs to stop hunger. All of a sudden say, this is possible. And that's why our studies with diabetics who basically have a much more difficult time than yourself, because they have really given up all hope. They said, just give me your drugs and I'll do what I have to do because I really can't control my appetite. But all of a sudden, they gain remarkable control of their hunger because we can change where the protein is being absorbed. That's why you need at least 30 grams of protein. And with this new technology, we can change where in the small intestine it's absorbed, so you're never hungry. Now life's a lot easier. But again, it's all about science. You have to know what the science of the problem is and what is the science of the solution. And once you have it, then the ability to basically address the real problem for America coming down the road in the next decade is basically skyrocketing healthcare cost. Because once you get diabetes, it's like playing like Wheel of Misfortune. Because diabetes is just the first manifestation of a disruption of your metabolism. If you have diabetes, you're now 4 times more likely to get heart disease and twice as likely to get Alzheimer's. It doesn't stop there, because once you have diabetes, your likelihood of having liver problems, kidney problems, neurological problems skyrockets dramatically. Because diabetes is just one organ, the pancreas, being attacked by inflammation. But all of the other organs in your body are also being attacked. So once you basically develop diabetes, a case of severe insulin resistance, basically it's a downhill slope. And but the data is also clear in terms of this insulin resistance. How long does it take to basically see it reduced? The answer is 4 days. I said, well, great. Well, unfortunately, in 4 days' time, it can come right back. But even if you reduce it and keep it under control, it's going to take a long time to repair the damage caused by the previous insulin resistance. That's why I had to follow a dietary program for a lifetime to repair the damage and basically now try to squeeze as much as you can out of your metabolism. For me, it's been a fascinating journey, a complex science one, but one that basically allows you to keep finding new ways to help people help themselves. Because there is no magic bullet, but there is a magical orchestration. And that magical orchestration allows you to basically retake control of your future.
I have 2 questions.
Yes.
First one is, so let's say you get to be in your 50s or 60s or even 70s and you haven't really done a good job up to that point with the quality of your diet. So can you make a big change in your health later in life when you start to follow these guidelines? That's my first question. And the second question is, why aren't we all taking cod liver oil every day then?
Well, let's answer the first question. That's easier. Because the answer is yes. You can begin to reverse insulin resistance at any age and any disease state. Like I said, the data says within 4 days, before you've lost any weight, you can see insulin resistance going down, which means your metabolic efficiency is going up. Now the question is, how much damage have you caused prior to that? That's the 64 question. Some organs, like the liver, actually repair themselves very well. Other organs, like the brain, don't do a very good job. So that, example, by the time you get Parkinson's, you've already lost 50 to 70% of the cells in the area of the brain that controls motor movement. So what you want to do is, I want to take those remaining neurons and basically give them the chance to do the best they can. Think of your brain like a TV remote. You hit the button a couple of times, the TV doesn't respond. So you can either throw the remote away or throw the TV away, or say, I got an idea, maybe I'll change the batteries. And that's usually the answer. And that's what happens in metabolism. Metabolism is really considered the battery that runs each of your 37 trillion cells. So once you change the battery, say, boy, that TV remote is working a lot better. Now, the second question was the, I took a pass at that in terms of the, I rephrased the second one, so I'll come back to that one.
So you talked about cod liver oil that our great-grandparents.
Well, it wasn't the great-grandparents. Cod liver oil actually had its start back in the Roman Empire. It was called garum. Everyone in the Roman Empire used garum. Emperors, merchants, gladiators, slaves. So what was garum? The most prized nutrient in the ancient world. Fermented fish intestines. That's right. So what you had gigantic garum factories all throughout the Roman Empire, taking sardines, letting them ferment, rot, and the oil would rise to the top. And they would bottle it, and it was considered precious throughout the empire. Well, with the fall of the Roman Empire, the recipe for garum was lost. But soon discovered back in about the 1780s, when the first cod livers were being brought from America back to England. And they let the cod livers ferment, rot in wooden vats, and the oil would rise to the top. And that oil was used as a wonder drug for treating rheumatoid arthritis. Now, it was pretty disgusting, but it worked. Next big breakthrough with Norwegians is that rather than letting the fish rot in wooden barrels, what if we put them in iron kettles and heat them up and let the oil rise faster? There was your cod liver oil. And it was disgusting, but every child had to have it. And so now the quality of the fish oil is much better, but you still need adequate levels of those omega-3 fatty acids. And our society, I said, 3 generations ago, getting 2 to 3 grams a day was no problem. Today, getting 100 milligrams is a major problem. So again, it's like a drug. If you give a placebo dose of the drug, you get placebo effects. Now, can you give too much? Possibly, but that's why we have blood tests that tell us basically we can titrate to bring you into a therapeutic zone. The right level of omega-3 fatty acids that are guaranteed to make you live longer with less chronic disease. But you got to get the stuff in your mouth.
So do you advocate taking an oil supplement every day, or should it always come through your diet?
It's almost impossible to come through the diet.
Okay.
I personally, I take my blood, every 2 months, just make sure I have the right zone. And I take about 10 grams of omega-3 fatty acids. Now, if you went to a health food store, that's about, 20 to 25 capsules of omega-3 fatty acids every day.
Oh, gosh.
That's the amount I need to keep my blood in an appropriate zone.
Okay.
Now, we've done a lot of work with people really doing, always like to look for the kind of the outliers, bringing people back from the dead or curing, or basically curing the blind. Bringing them back from the dead is basically taking people with severe brain trauma. And we've done this routinely now for 20 years, but we give them even higher levels to rebuild the brain. And likewise, curing the blind, there's a disease called age-related macular degeneration, the primary cause of blindness after age 50. And in studies we published, if you give high enough levels of fish oil, the eyesight regains. You're actually rebuilding the brain.
That's fascinating.
Oh,
So my parents take a liquid dose of fish oil every day.
That's right. We're not going to take 30 capsules, but we'll take about a tablespoon of highly purified fish oil, the same ones we use for our clinical studies.
Sounds like something I might want to consider adding, or maybe all of us consider adding to our daily regimen.
There's virtually no one in America who's taking sufficient levels. And so you're already playing the game with one hand and one leg tied behind your back.
I do take fish oil. When I bring it up to that level, I start getting black and blues all over me.
Well, that's why we talk about a therapeutic zone. That's why we developed a finger stick test that basically you can now titrate yourself. It's really personalized medicine. Basically say, how much do I need? I need some. Can I take too much? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is why, again, it's I know I say personalized medicine because it's really personalized living. We're all genetically different. So part of our aspect is once we know the rules, seeing how we can adjust them to fit my personal or your personal biochemistry and genetics. But these are some of the things that that we do that I think has great implications for the future of medicine. I've spent 40 years exploring this. It gets more exciting each day because it gets more complex. But the implications also become more exciting. Because rather than say, I need 1,000 drugs for 1,000 diseases, no, I just probably need the right diet.
Wonderful. Anybody else have any questions for Dr. Sears?
No, I'm just perusing all the recipes on your website. I'm always looking for good recipes to mix things up a little bit.
Well, that's why, because we want to look for new recipes, but here's the facts of life. We don't eat that many things. Think about it. You eat 2 different breakfasts per day, or 2 different breakfasts, maybe 3 different lunches, 5 different dinners. And if you go out to dinner, you might have in a large city, you might have thousands of restaurants, but you go to the same 5 restaurants all the time. And each restaurant has a very large menu, but you eat the same meal there every time because you like it. So even though we profess saying, I really want to eat all sorts of foods, saying we're actually pretty boring in our food choices. Now, when I go to Italy, I always had the same meal over and over and over again. I'll have grilled vegetables as the appetizer, grilled fish for the entree with more grilled vegetables, and fresh fruit for dessert, berries. Done. Do that dinner and lunch. And for breakfast, they usually have buffets. There's always some grilled vegetables and get some egg whites. Done. So once you get into a routine and say, well, isn't that boring? Say, wait a minute. Where are the best vegetables in the world? Italy. Where's the best fruit in the world? Italy. Where's the best fish in the world? Italy. So I want a good meal. I'll fly to Italy rather than going out here in Florida.
Right. I think, again, I go back to all the sustainability has to do with the body, mind, and soul, because I just had this conversation with my husband, because as I'm getting older, I'm excited to become able to broaden the fact that I could take care of myself, that I could cook for myself, that I could exercise, that I could do all these things that I didn't have time for while I'm working. And I'm finding that people my age are becoming, and I'm only 62, but I'm finding people my age are becoming more sedentary. They're becoming sicker, and all they want to do is go out to eat. So my relationship with food has changed over time. I would rather, meet a friend and go for a walk and get a cup of tea, like, afterward, and do things like that. Not that I don't enjoy going out and not that I don't enjoy cooking, but I can't go out to eat 2 or 3 times a week, financially, or just to go out to eat. You know what I mean?
Right. But as we age, we have to double down. We have to double down on discipline, double down in terms of our exercise. I try to spend about 2 hours a day exercising, and we have to double down our diet. If we want to basically, live the last part of our life with dignity and respect for ourselves. But once we basically give in to the easy way, somebody else will do it for me. Or I'm too tired to exercise. Or I don't want to basically take time to reduce stress. Then basically, again, you have the ills of the world coming crashing down on you, have no one to blame but yourself.
Mm.
So again, we always go through various stages of life, one learning, then two becoming, then giving, and finally understanding. And it's usually that last stage of life we understand what we have to do to make sure that basically we live the last part of our life with dignity, both mental and physical dignity.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. Would you like to tell us about the book you're working on?
Well, the book I'm working on right now is the working title is The Wellness Zone. We talk a lot about medicine, but we never talk about wellness. You say, that means I'm not sick. Not quite. Wellness can be defined like any disease. And my definition of wellness is the absence of insulin resistance. That means your metabolism is working at peak efficiency. Now, the subtitle of the book is the new science of basically metabolic engineering. How to re-engineer our metabolism using our diet to tune it up like a Maserati. So that at any age, we can basically squeeze as much out of life as we possibly can. So it's a very complex book. My job is to make it a little simpler to read. But it's a fascinating, for me, it's been a fascinating odyssey for the last 40 years of understanding the complexity of human biochemistry and the how we can either basically be the master of it or be the victim of it. Most of us have chosen to be the victim of it, saying, let's go out and basically have our dinner at the local pizzeria. It's easy, but basically you're doing everything to basically rob your future of the your true golden years when you have the vitality, both mentally and physically, to put it all together.
So thank you for that. I'm excited for your book to come out. When do you expect it to come out?
About let's say 2 years ago.
Okay. All right. We understand that. All right. We'll watch for that. I do have one more question. You mentioned those 3 Ps.
Yes.
I happen to love pasta. Do you ever indulge in pasta, or is it on the no list?
I have pasta every night.
Okay.
Not the pasta you might eat. It's the pasta we use for our clinical studies. Because unlike, because I talked about this molecular baking technology we invented, basically it takes a food that makes you hungry and fat, and all of a sudden you're no longer hungry and you lose weight. And more importantly, our clinical studies say, and you reduce insulin resistance. So now the more pasta you eat, it becomes like a vegetable helper, or this new type of pasta. Now put as many vegetables on there as you possibly can.
Is this pasta available in the grocery stores?
No, but it's available through our website.
Okay.
But this is the one we use for all of our diabetic studies, because diabetics also like pasta. They also like rice. So we basically have a rice substitute. So these are substitutes that look like and taste like the foods they like to eat, but basically have the totally opposite hormonal effects, but they're meant to be like vegetable helpers. Put vegetables on a plate, they'll sit there probably for the next 2 months. Put some vegetables on top of some pasta or a rice, they're gone. All of a sudden say, this is easy.
Oh, that's awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Sears, for joining us tonight. We appreciate your wisdom, and we're excited to put some of your ideas into practice in our own lives. Any final remarks?
Yeah, just remember, do what your great-grandmother told your grandmother to do. Have some protein every meal, no more, no less than the palm of your hand. You can't leave the table until you eat all your vegetables, and you have to take your tablespoon of cod liver oil every day.
That sounds great. Thank you all so much for joining us. Dr. Sears, we greatly appreciate you, and we wish everyone the best. Namaste, everyone.
Take care. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.